All right. So we're here with, I believe it's season 2, episode 6 of the Dawg Talk Podcast. I am Butler Insider Akeem Glaspie, and we're not looking at Matt Glennesque. We have a new co-host on the podcast, our new college editor and motorsports editor, Aaron Ferguson. Aaron, I guess I'll just give you some time to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good morning. Yeah, it's great to be here. I've long looked up to the Indy Star, and so to finally be a part of such a talented sports department and newspaper overall is a true blessing. I'm very grateful. But I've put a lot of hard work. Even before I graduated from Bradley University in 2015, kind of launched my journalism career while in school, just through internships. And I kind of had a TV background from my time there, but my first job was in Peoria, Illinois, at the Peoria Journal-Star, through the networking I had done while in school as a high school sports reporter. And then I freelanced for quite a bit and ended up in the region, Northwest Indiana. Shout out to my Rats. Loved my time up there, and just the great people. There are a lot of cool stories that we were able to tell up there. I started as assistant sports editor there, and then worked my way up to being the sports editor and also the night editor on news side. And so from my time there, spent, I don't know, little more than 2 years, two and a half years there, and moved to Madison, Wisconsin to be the deputy sports editor for Lee Enterprises sports outfits there. It was 12 papers in total. So we did a lot of Badgers coverage and Packers, and worked with the columnists there, and really saw a lot of development with the writers I worked with too, that I'm really proud of. And it led to, in 2023, we won the APSC Triple Crown, and seeing some of those stories that I worked on that took, a month or more to get to the finish line, to be featured and be recognized nationally was really cool. So yeah, that's kind of the, I guess, 2-minute elevator speech of my professional career.
Very nice. Very, very well said and succinct. So you're bringing fresh eyes to kind of the Butler basketball. You're not a jaded Butler basketball fan like my former co-host. But so obviously you've been on for about a week or so, and last night was kind of a par for the course for this Butler team, unfortunately. But I tweeted during the game that was probably the best first half that I had seen. I'll throw out to you a little bit. What was your impressions of that first half, and what did you kind of think was that, or I guess you wouldn't know, but were you surprised with the way it ended?
I don't think I was surprised the way it ended, just because I remember like the UConn game, and I've been watching Butler throughout the season, just some random games too, but it just feels like they always find a way to collapse, or maybe that's not fair, but it just seems like that they lose their legs or they just don't know how to finish. And so maybe in the way it happened, I was surprised, like Marquette not playing Cam Jones for 11 minutes in the second half, and they pull ahead. That was a little bit surprising, but the first half was tremendous. I mean, I think their turnovers were a little higher than they would have liked. I think they had 6 in the first half, but they shot 57%. Were shooting it well from the perimeter. They're getting to the foul line. They just looked like a well-oiled machine who had some continuity and had played together. And I'm sure they had some confidence, because that was the lineup that kind of gave Marquette fits the first time around too. But the first half, like it just, I hate using the old cliche tale of two halves, but that's kind of what it ended up being. But yeah, the first half, man, I was like, wow, they may have finally turned a corner here, building off the DePaul win.
Yeah, and actually, after the game, Coach Mata was saying, like, they hit all their numbers in terms of like the shooting percentages and turnovers. I believe they wanted under 12 turnovers. So overall, the game they didn't perform as poorly as it looks just by the second half result. But you're right. I mean, Landon Moore was kind of that was a kind of a chess piece that they used. And then even when Andre Screen came into the game, I felt like he had such a big impact. But then in the second half, all that goes away, and it's just the way they started. You're right. Confidence was kind of the key. I mean, 3 threes like back to back to back, and 5 different players scoring, and like Hinkle is hyped, and it's like, okay, this is what I would imagine everyone thought they were getting when they came here. But yeah, and it's tough. And they switched up the matchups. I believe Stevie Mitchell started guarding Jamil Telford, because in the first half, you just see him put his shoulders down and he's getting to the cup one way or another. When he's like determined, he plays so well. But then they took that away in the second half. I believe he ended up over 5 from the field. He had 7 free throws, but their offense relies so much around him getting to the basket. And yeah, I mean, Shaka said they needed to play with violence, and they kind of took the game from Butler. That's kind of what I wrote on my insider, that, you know, they played better, which is crazy to say. They played better with their star player out of the game, and Butler hasn't really got a performance like that, you know, all year. Maybe you could say the DePaul game when Pierre Brooks goes off for 29, but he played poorly. There's no real other way to say it. 0 for 5 from 3, 4 from 13. It's just, you know, when he's taking these NBA threes, they look, I mean, he can make them, but when they're not going, they look like awful shots, and they just really didn't do much to support Jamil. So that was kind of a letdown. But any other thoughts about the Marquette game?
Yeah, you know, the Marquette got off to a 7-2 start, and I was like, oh no. I was like, here we go. And we had talked Monday before the game about, you know, if you can't get up for this game and you want to make March Madness, and this is a game they had to have, if you can't get up for this game, then what are you doing? And that was my first thought when it was 7-2 Marquette. And I was like, oh boy, this is going to be just a disaster of the rest of the season. But they really rallied and played really impressive. But yeah, that second half was just crazy, because at one point I had counted, I think they were 3 for 20 during one stretch. Like they were shooting 15% over a pretty long period of time. And I was just like, how does this happen? Like what changed? And you're right. And Thad said it too. You know, it's a credit to Marquette. Like they switched things up. Shaka's an ultimate culture guy. He gets them to play defense. They strive for deflections and disruptions. Like that's a credit to Marquette, I think, more than it is Butler. But also, like, how does that happen? I get missed shots and contested shots, but it just seemed like they were out of control at times, and we're trying to force things maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's Marquette taking away the first option. You know, the first option is get the ball in Jamil's hands, let him get downhill, and then they're going to reverse the ball. And then if they can't get a 3 from Patrick, and then they had Landon in there who was creating a little bit, who can kind of attack and, you know, be a secondary playmaker. But yeah, Marquette just took away their first option, and Butler doesn't have a counter. And that's kind of what Marquette did. You know, they tried to take away Cam Jones, but they have other counters. They had 3 other players in double figures. So, I mean, it's just, I don't know if it's a depth thing or a confidence thing, but Butler they need that second player. And if Pierre Brooks isn't scoring, you know, 15 to 18 points to support a strong performance from Jamil, Butler doesn't really have a chance. But just from my talking to you, Aaron, you seem to be a very positive guy. So we'll just try to spin this forward positively. I guess I'll lay this question to you. Is there anything Butler can look forward to, like let's say, call you an outsider looking in? Is there anything positive that Butler can kind of strive for down the stretch? Okay.
I mean, their whole season's still in front of them, right? I think the beautiful part about college basketball is there's this tournament at the end of the year, and if you win it, you go to the dance. And so without doing that, you know, Butler's really going to have to get hot and maybe win out to try for an at-large and have a deep Big East tourney run. But still, everything's in front of them. And so I think, you know, they have a very veteran starting lineup. And so I think it's you know, you want to do right by them, but also if you're Thad, like, you got to start looking for the future and trying to get continuity with some of the younger players and some of the players who you're going to have to re-recruit to return with roster management in today's age. And so, like, I'm always kind of a big picture guy, and that's something that I'm always like, oh, like with my teams, it's like, should we play so and so or should we play so and so? You know, do you play the vet to give yourself a chance to win? And that's probably the way they should go. I mean, I'm not counting them out of the tournament at all because they've played UConn close. They've played Marquette close for periods of times. And so I think there's something to build on there. And really it could be a culture building for the future too, even though a lot of these guys are going to be graduated and out of eligibility.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, you would imagine the Big East tournament's going to go through either UConn or Marquette, and based on how the bracket's going, they're probably going to play one of them in the either championships or the semis if they were to get hot. So that you're right, that's kind of something they could oddly look forward to, is that they can hang with the kind of the two Big East powers, and everyone else should be a toss up. But yeah, it's interesting against Marquette. Bowden Capke doesn't play at all. Evan Haywood doesn't play at all. Augusto Cassia, he's out with an injury. So there's a lot of underclassmen who didn't play at all against Marquette, and those are kind of going to be the key guys moving forward. You're right. If they have to re-recruit. Finley Bizjack into the portal at the end of last year, so no one really knows where his standing is. But I guess the pie in the sky is this recruiting class that's coming in. So if you can get a core of those guys coming back, you add an influx of talent. But again, Marquette's they're a pretty veteran group too. So what can you do with 4 talented freshmen? That's a lot to ask. And underclassmen that are on the team currently don't really have very big roles. So it's something to look forward to, but we're going to need to see some growth. Evan Haywood, I wrote on him a couple weeks ago. Great kid, great attitude. He's kind of going to be a knockdown shooter for them in the future, but what can they do to surround them? They're going to be losing a huge chunk of their team, and Jamil Pierre, Andre Screen, and then Kobe King is kind of an X factor as well. Not really a true point guard, but he can be such a kind of a lightning rod and microwave offense. So what can they do to support his talents? Because you don't really like to see him play in the half court. He can make some very difficult shots, but again, that's a hard way to live. So it's not a whole lot of positivity. And actually, I'm working on a story for this weekend about that Marquette game in terms of resume building. That was kind of the last kind of key cog they needed to get anything close to an at-large big. They're going to have to catch fire, but it kind of started last night. So that's Dad didn't say that he wouldn't say that they let one slip away, because every Big East game is tough. But in terms of March Madness and an at-large bid, they definitely kind of let one slip away. So I guess that's kind of all we have today. Not a overly positive podcast, but I guess that's kind of the state of the program right now. But Aaron, is there anything else you want to add, or any questions you have for me, or just anything you want to say about your early time here at the Indy Star?
Well, you did touch on one thing. They had that 43-day stretch where they didn't win, right? And who says they can't do a 43-day stretch where they don't lose? The schedule does soften now. I think they have St. John's once, and then they have Creighton. But really, they have a lot of winnable games on their schedule. And so who knows? To leave on a positive note, they could get hot here. Who knows?
Yes, Aaron is Mr. Positivity, especially when compared to my former co-host who went out with a bang on his last podcast. He kind of let some shots off, but that's Matt. He's a firecracker from time to time. So, all right, well, that's been Dawg Talk with myself, Akeem Glaspie, and my new co-host, Aaron Ferguson. Thank you for listening.